Welcome and hello from Alex, with a story from r/MaliciousCompliance, where a recruiter outsmarts a micromanaging hiring manager with a flood of emails. Coming up next is a story from Stardust Rose 9449. You want to review every single candidate. You got it, babe. This is the best time that my warnings went unheeded and made the client regret ever asking. I worked in recruitment for 9 years, and a few years back I had a new client, hiring manager, and she didn't like abiding by the rules set up for the recruitment team. For one thing, we review the applicants, interview the best qualified candidates, and then submitted them to the hiring manager for consideration. Well, this hiring manager couldn't understand why we only sent over 3 candidates in a week. Honestly, she's lucky as some positions did not garner that many applicants. I explained that we submit 3 candidates for every 1 position available. This ensures that the hiring manager's time was considered when scheduling next step interviews. This wasn't just a standard I set, it was approved by her company's top bosses, and frankly was standard at another place I used to work as well. Hiring manager, that is absurd. I want to review all of the candidates so I can tell you whom to prescreen and then you schedule their interview with me based on my availability. But, ma'am, you have almost 100 applicants that met your minimum qualifications. I don't think you really want to devote that much time to reviewing all of these resumes, and honestly, some of them were not great. Hiring manager, are you not listening? Send them all over to me and I'll take care of it. Yes, ma'am, you got it. I'll send those over right away. I wrote an email to the hiring manager immediately after the call, restating the topics discussed by phone and asked, again, if she was certain she wanted all of the candidates sent to her. She confirmed. I complied and forwarded to my boss with an explanation that she will take care of reviewing all applicants and my numbers were going to be skewed for the month. I did as requested, selecting nearly 100 candidates in the system and moved them to hiring manager review. Now, what this did was send individual emails for each candidate as an update to the hiring manager, and it would ping her email every 3 days that they weren't reviewed. I smirked, knowing what was about to happen and my rear was going to get chewed out in about a week, but it felt really good because I knew I was right. 2 days later, my boss calls and says he got an irritating phone call from this hiring manager who said she never requested this, to which they responded with the information detailed in my email. She was speechless. He let her know that I would go back into the system and back up the candidate process so it would be taken out of her to-do list and I would continue to send over candidates that were the best fit for the role as described in our processes. I never received pushback from that hiring manager ever again. This is absolutely delicious. What a fantastic story of bureaucratic justice. It sounds like Opie had dealt with this kind of pushy client before and knew exactly how to handle it, laying out the process clearly, then following the client's ridiculous request to the letter. Genius. 100 emails pinging her inbox every 3 days. That's pure evil in the best possible way. The best part is how Opie documented everything. When the client inevitably came crying to the boss, Opie had a paper trail a mile long. Sounds like the boss was smart enough to back his employee up too. Opie deserves a raise for their patience and for sticking to their guns and following the rules, of course. This is a cautionary tale for any client who thinks they can micromanage the recruitment process. Coming up next is a story from Correct West 2427. You want me to stay in my station? Okay. I worked as the lead cook in a very busy restaurant, 50 minutes $75K weekly. My boss would write who's working what station and generally we follow this. My station is the dead center of the line, so the expo and anyone asking for anything look to my station for everything. They don't ask the respective station for what they're looking for, they come to me. I've been noticing everybody else gets to switch their stations and rotate daily. I usually don't mind or care, but after 9 months it got a little tiring. Someone asked me if he could train in my station and I showed him the ropes and he became damn near as good as me in it, so I let him take the ropes on a Saturday night and he did just fine. Fry side wasn't doing too hot and I went over to help them. In the process my boss came over and freaked out to see one of the new guys on my station. He didn't look too happy about it. He called for a meeting the next day, saying that we all have to stay in our station, that's final. Mind you, this new guy on my station was one of the prep guys and was just filling on the line for a week while someone's on vacation. Fast forward to service and the protein side is going down hard along with fry side. New guy peers the corner from prep to see everyone in the weeds and I have no tickets on my printer. I look at my boss, then look at him and tell him to stay put in prep, that we must stay in our station. Whole line fell and it was glorious to tell my boss to stay in his office and he knows nothing about the kitchen or how to run a line. He went to reply and I shut him up quickly with, "Your station is in the office, fucking stay in your lane." This has to be one of the most satisfying restaurant stories I've ever heard. Micromanaging a kitchen, especially a busy one, is a recipe for disaster. Good on Opie for sticking to his guns, or should I say, staying in his station, about the new guy. Training him up was a smart move, and clearly the guy was a natural. The boss freaking out. Unbelievable. Then to call a meeting and enforce these rigid stations? That's when Opie knew it was time for a power move, letting the kitchen fall apart while the new guy watched from prep. Genius. And the final line to the boss. Absolutely legendary. Sometimes, you gotta fight fire with fire. And in this case, Opie used the boss's own rules to expose how nonsensical they were. Hopefully, that was a wake-up call for the boss. But either way, Opie deserves a raise, and maybe a new, less clueless boss. Coming up next is a story from Stranded Comedy. And if you like the video so far, don't forget to like the video. It only takes a second and helps me out a lot. Denial of service. You got it. Sue, I work in cybersecurity. One point I worked for a managed security services provider, or outsourced cybersecurity. Had a manager who was surrounded by yes men who worshipped him as awesome, which based on some stuff he showed I wasn't impressed. But that's irrelevant. He wanted to start stealing malicious site detections by various vendors and resale the data as proprietary threat intelligence. Culmination of data mined by actual threat researchers. Sorry, not steal, redistribute for a fee. Anyway, I told this dude you want this data as a report, not an email alert. If you do this as an email alert, you'll generate about 4 million emails in a day for just one of our customers, who will remain nameless. Bark bark, woof woof, reports aren't real time enough, needs to be email alert. Cool, so to make sure I'm understanding clearly, you are saying turn it on. All of this conversation was via email, of course. You got it, boss, and I did as I was told. Later the same night I get added to a critical call. Customer identified an email coming from their SIEM to the tune of 3 million messages and wanted to know why we enabled this. This same director asks me why it was turned on, telling the customer I'm the one responsible for building the ways we detect threats. Absolutely, team. I apologize. I had attempted to have our leadership reconsider this requirement as it would adversely impact your environment to the tune of 4 million emails. Let me forward the communication to all of us on the bridge. Do you all want me to turn off this rule? Yes. Absolutely. I just forwarded the email thread. Manager, looks like you were the one who authorized and made the decision to turn it on despite the risk, and I went ahead and disabled the rule. Dude got promoted to VP and I was no longer involved in threat monitoring, so I'm pretty sure he controlled the narrative very well. But I enjoyed my moment of listening to the customer bring legal and discuss cancellations and repercussions. I left and am now the proud owner of a cybersecurity product for biomed and facility devices. Wow, that manager sounds like he had about as much sense as a blinking keyboard. Seriously, 4 million email alerts. The customer would have been drowning in a sea of spam. Good on Opie for trying to warn him, but emailing it was genius. Paper trail city. And then to throw Opie under the bus during the call. Classic move from a bad leader. But the best part, Opie shutting it down completely and then forwarding the email thread with a "look what you made me do" flourish. Pure brilliance. Sure, getting promoted stinks, but at least Opie got some satisfaction out of it and now gets to work on something way cooler: cybersecurity for biomedical devices. Sounds fascinating. Seems like Opie dodged a bullet and ended up in a much better place. Coming up next is a story from Classic Ad 6001. Haven't done the dishes in weeks. I'm not sure if this falls under malicious compliance or petty revenge or a combo of both, TBH. But anyway, I'm a college student with roommates who love to use my stuff even though we had a roommate agreement and I basically said ask first if you'd like to use my stuff. That lasted a week because apparently they think if I let them use my stuff once it gives them permission to do it all the time. I noticed one roommate in particular had taken a liking to my frying pan and mugs. Specifically, these are 4 identical glass mugs. One day I was doing the dishes and was in a rush to get somewhere and noticed there were 2 of my mug in the sink. I went to the girl and said something along the lines of, "Hey, if you're going to use my mugs, please clean them." Then she said okay. I left both in the sink after doing the dishes I used. I come back after a weekend at home to find those 2 mugs still in there with coffee from 3 days earlier marinating in there and another one of my cups in there. I talked to her multiple other times in the following weeks about how if she plans on using my stuff she shall clean it. Once I realized this stuff was not being cleaned, I decided, well, if people don't want to clean my stuff that they use, why on earth should I clean my stuff that I use? So I stopped doing my dishes. Funny enough, 3 days later this girl nagged me about doing the dishes. So I said, then do yours. And she said that there were none of her things in the sink. I responded with the fact that all 4 of the mugs she has used are in there in my pan. She said those are your dishes. Her logic is basically if she doesn't own it, she can use it without cleaning it. So I started not only leaving my dishes in the sink but using hers. Anyways, I haven't done the dishes in 3 weeks. If it bothers her so much, she would clean her stuff that I used, but apparently according to her I have to clean them because I used it. Hypocrites are so funny to mess with. Wow, that roommate sounds like a real piece of work. Using your stuff without asking, then leaving it dirty. No wonder Opie decided to take a stand. In my mind, the passive-aggressive dish strike is genius. It's the perfect mix of petty revenge and sticking it to them where it hurts, a messy kitchen. 3 weeks of dirty dishes. That's gotta be reaching some serious biohazard territory. Hopefully, it'll make them realize how inconsiderate they've been. Using their stuff too is just adding insult to injury. Honestly, I can't help but picture the look on their faces when they see Opie using their stuff. Priceless. Maybe this whole ordeal will force a long overdue conversation about respecting boundaries and cleaning up after themselves. Here's hoping for a clean kitchen and a more considerate roommate situation for Opie. That wraps up r/MaliciousCompliance. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to visit my Spotify channel. Link is in the description, so you can listen to the best Reddit story while being outside, and remember to hit that subscribe button.